Hello and welcome back to the MMA India Show. We are here in Pune right now at the Conrad in the presidential suite. We thought we would end the year in style. So we are coming to you from the presidential suite at the Conrad, and with me, Praveen Dabas, and I've kept a new nickname for Akhilesh Ganavarapu now. It is Outstanding. The outstanding Akhilesh Ganavarapu is with me, and we are going to talk UFC 207, some great fights. Before that, I would like to reminisce a little about the year gone by, since this is the last episode of the year. We're recording the last episode of the year right after the end. It's right now. It's 12:17 p.m. On Saturday, the 31st of December. The fights barely finished an hour ago, and we're recording it right now. Of course, this episode will probably come to you on the first or second day of the new year, but this is our last episode of the year. The MMA India Show is very grateful to all of you fans and the whole fighter community who have been encouraging us and made us the number one MMA portal in India right now. And we've had a great run so far. A lot of people are engaging with us on Facebook, on YouTube, and we've put together a great team with Akhilesh, and we've got some really great fighters who we've interviewed. Starting with Lawrence Larkin, then we had Jorge Masvidal, Tonya Evinger, of course, Kamaru Usman, Uriah Faber, Gary Goodrich, and just recently Valentina Shevchenko, Angela Lee, and Victor Q from the One Championship. Am I leaving anybody out?
I don't think so. I think you covered everyone.
Okay, great. So we've had a really great run since August 20th when we've launched, and we are very grateful, like I said, to all of you for following us and supporting us. And we are going to try to do even bigger and better in the coming new year. And do you think I can let out the name we might be talking to?
Just
Hold
I
on.
was about to tell you. Just keep it with yourself for one more day
Okay,
so that
great.
we
That's
can
why I'm asking.
communicate
So
and
we
everything.
might have some very big surprises for you in the coming, in the very first week or two of the new year. But we will get back to you on that. Uh, I think it's very important as an MMA media portal. Of course, looking back on the year, Indian MMA is making strides as well. It's very important that we bring Indian MMA out there to the fans, that we cover it. But at the same time, it's very important that we also pinpoint things where we can improve, all of us. Everybody who has a stake in Indian MMA, it's very important that we point these things out so that we can improve it. And I don't think anyone should take these as an attack or anything, or say that because certain things have been said, therefore we are not trying to promote Indian MMA. We are always trying to promote Indian MMA, which is why we are in this. We have a passion for this, which is why we're sitting here right now talking. Of course, everything is, of course, people watch UFC also, and when you watch UFC, we want the Indian fighters and the Indian fans to get inspired to achieve greater things. But at the same time, like I said, just because we say certain things does not mean we are against it. It is that we want to grow together and in the right way. So I think we should all do that. And very soon we are going to come out with an episode which will be the third in our State of Indian MMA series, which will be on fighter safety. And we'll be doing a special episode on that very soon with all the stakeholders, somebody representing all the stakeholders of Indian MMA very soon.
Yep, that sounds like a good idea.
Yep. So we will do that very soon, hopefully in the first or second week of January, so that we keep pushing Indian MMA in the right direction. And now, coming down to UFC 207, the fight which just finished. I think we shall start with Hendricks versus Magny. And of course, we'll keep telling you the results. Everybody who won the USI Universal Gloves will also then know the results. We'll post them as well. And those lucky ones will get them delivered to your doorstep. Hendricks versus Magny, like you just mentioned, we were chatting that he had 8 out of 8 takedowns.
Right. He had completed all of his takedowns.
He completed all of his takedowns, and yet he was still on the winning side. And he looked, of course, he didn't seem to be expecting that loss. And like you mentioned, Neil Magny did finish off the rounds strongly, though then one wonders, is it enough to win the last minute of a 5-minute round to win a whole fight?
Right. So basically, when you go to the judges, it depends upon how they see a fight. If they kind of, so it's very irregular. How you rate the entire round or the entire 5 minutes depends upon the judge's discretion, nobody else's. So it depends upon how they see. If they look at your takedowns and think, okay, he has completed all of his takedowns, they might look at the opponent and how he has done on his back, because Neil Magny did very well to defend and caught Hendricks in a couple of predicaments as well. He nearly finished him with the elbows in the second round, for example. Then I think he got him in the triangle in the third round. So the judges, it depends upon where they stand. If they think, okay, a certain fighter has controlled a certain fight for the most duration, it can swing in one way. But if they think the other guy is offensive, he has showed more aggression and showed more control or showed more pressure, exerted more pressure, then it might go the other way. So it completely depends upon how the judges see the fight playing out.
Of course, but having said that, Hendricks did seem to be the aggressor most of the time, and Magny seemed to be countering rather than trying to take the fight to him.
Right. So, Hendricks for this training camp extensively concentrated on wrestling because, going into the fight, Magny had the reach advantage undoubtedly. And we saw what happened with Stephen Thompson and Johnny Hendricks. Once they have that reach advantage against a wrestler who tries to close the distance, who tries to get inside the pockets, get into those clinches and, take your opponent down. If you have the range advantage, then you're at a better position to keep the distance, to maintain that reach advantage, and then work from the outside. So it's difficult to exactly say who won, but most of the people thought Hendricks did enough to win the fight. Was it the best version of Johnny Hendricks? No. It's hard to imagine that someone was the welterweight champion just 2 years ago has come down to this, because he has lost three of his previous 3 fights, 5 out of his previous 7 or something like that. So it's difficult to see what is wrong with Johnny. Obviously, going into the fight week itself, he looked terrible. He had a bad weight cut. He changed obviously from, say, George Lockhart, who was his nutritionist before. He said, I'm not going to work with you. I'm going to work with someone else. So, at the end of the day, going into the fight week, it is very important where you stand as a fighter. Cutting those previous extra few pounds going into the final night of the fight, very difficult to get that energy back, rehydrate yourself, make sure that you're at 100%, because you obviously cannot be at 100%. So I think that even played a factor in Hendricks' loss, because as a wrestler, one of the main things that you have is cardio and conditioning. But Johnny gassed out in the third round. It was very obvious when he got in the clinch and, he got Magny against the fence. He was too tired to go for a takedown. He was lying on Magny and hoping that he would get his energy back so that he could complete the takedown. So it was obvious Johnny had a very bad weight cut. Maybe that, led to what happened eventually with the decision. The only thing that I can see for Hendricks going forward is him moving up to middleweight and doing what Kelvin Gastelum has done.
But Kevin Gastelum wants to come back down again.
Yeah, because, again, when you go to middleweight, there are bigger fighters, You take someone like Yoel Romero, for example, you match that up with Johnny Hendricks. That's a very, very bad matchup. Stylistically, physically, however you want to look at it. So Hendricks and Gastelum obviously want to stay at welterweight. But the safety comes first for these fighters at this point.
Yeah.
because what happened with Johnny Hendricks even before his fight with Tyron Woodley, where he had that terrible weight cut, had to be hospitalized, and the fight was scrapped.
Yeah.
So you need to ask, for how long can Johnny keep this going, because he's on a losing streak. He's on very thin ice at this point.
Now, I just want to bring to the viewers' attention one thing is I read this statistic just yesterday, I think, that since the new timing of the weigh-ins, there have been 21 people who have missed weight. Johnny Hendricks might be the 22nd, whereas previously in the year before the new rule started, there was only one guy who had missed weight. So is the new rule making people take it easier, or how? Because it seems it's such a big difference that it's obviously playing a part.
So Johnny, if I remember correctly, was the 20th guy, and Ray Borg was the 21st.
Okay.
21st, yeah. Okay. So see, it's not just the new weight cutting policies, because all what it does is it gives the fighters extra time to rehydrate, to recuperate, and then fight on a fight night. So it's not that. And the other point that people actually raised is, and which is a very valid point. So the way that fighters cut those final last few pounds is by getting into sauna early in the morning, so that by the time it's evening, they shred those final 2-3 pounds that they need to lose on fight, on the final day of the fight week before going into the fight, and go into the weigh-ins, weigh in properly, and then start rehydrating. So I don't think that is that big of a concern. But the people that have also pointed out is, this has been a predicament ever since USADA, the new USADA thing came in, the drug testing policy. So you never know. I mean,
because it probably has something. Of course, they're tied in because they cannot. I'm not saying anybody did, but people were, of course, using diuretics and other weight cutting pills, which are off limits now.
Right, and even the IV rehydration.
Of course, that is stopped as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so even that has been banned. So it all comes down to the timing of when the USADA anti-drug policy came in, when UFC said we have now stringent rules. You cannot do this. You cannot have IVs. You cannot have diuretics and all of these things. So I think it's just a culmination of all of those factors. It's not just the new weight cutting policy, because that doesn't make a difference. Fine, sauna maybe early in the morning, you cannot get into a sauna and shred the final couple of pounds. But ideally, one night before the fight or one day before the fight, you want to weigh in, where you stand, and then rehydrate. That has normally what it has always been. Yeah. But I think the new anti-drug policy, the USADA regulations, ever since they were implemented, and ever since UFC stopped the IV rehydrations, then you have seen fighters failing to make weight a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now, anything else you want to say on Magny versus Hendricks, or should we move on?
Yeah, I mean, the final thing is, it's I don't know. I mean, many people say it's either middleweight for Johnny, or fighting in a different promotion, getting some more victories.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that this is the guy who was the welterweight champion, who defeated Robbie Lawler, and who arguably defeated George St. Pierre 3 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that fight, and a lot of people, including me, thought he did enough to win it.
Yeah, and there was only one guy who thought GSP won that fight, and that was Dave Meltzer. And even Dana White pointed at that point in the press conference and said, "Look, you're the only one among all of us," because even Dana White said, "I thought Johnny Hendricks won the fight." So. Yeah, I mean, it's 2-3 years down the line. He was a welterweight champion.
It just happens, like Hindi में कहते हैं वक्त बुरा आ जाता है. तो जब वक्त बुरा होता है तो कुछ भी ठीक नहीं चलता. So I think Johnny Hendricks का वक्त बुरा चल रहा है, but he just needs to change one thing to turn things around, and he's not able to do that right now.
Yeah, but what should he change? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is it nutritionists? Is it dietitians? Is it the manner? Because
I think unfortunately you just get into this headspace also, where you're losing, and you get into that headspace, and it takes away, I think, sometimes your aggression and your positive frame of mind as well.
Yeah, and even
because you're worried about not losing again rather than winning.
Yeah, I mean, it depends upon the mentality of the fighters. That has always been there. But these guys were champions. These guys were. John Hendricks is not someone that just came into the UFC, is kind of awestruck by the magnitude of the promotion or anything like that, because he was the former welterweight champion.
Yeah.
So it's all about getting. So what the other thing that Johnny Hendricks usually does is, once the fight is done, he immediately bloats up. Although he fights at 170, he walks at around 210, 205, 210, or 210.
Which is a big difference.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so Johnny Hendricks primarily needs to make sure that
He
it's
walks
just
around at a healthier weight, closer to his weight class.
right. It's not just during the training camp where he needs to cut down. It's his general health. It's like his lifestyle that he needs to control.
Yeah.
So no matter how many nutritionists or dietitians he might change, nothing's gonna change unless Johnny gets into a better lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, okay. Having said that, let's move on to Smolka versus Borg. Borg, of course, missed weight as well, but he dominated the fight. There weren't any real standout moments, I would say. Of course, most of the fight happened on the ground. Smolka did manage to extricate himself from, I think, were there a couple of arm triangles in there, or that he was. Sorry?
One. There was one.
There was one, yeah, that he was stuck in. So he was on the defensive most of the time. Borg was the aggressor. Borg, his corner, I think in the second round, he did say that he had broken his ankle. So we're not sure whether he had or not. We'll find out, in some time, I guess. But if he had, I mean, he wasn't really showing it, and he did one hell of a fight, even after that.
Yeah, so that was immediately after Smolka had him in the heel hook. The major difference again, we have to talk about the weight difference. Borg came in, as you said, as more than 3.5 pounds over the weight limit, which is about 129.5. So Smolka had the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm not going to take the fight, because 3.5 pounds in a 125-pound division makes a lot of difference. But still, Smolka, I don't know what happened, because he was the number 9th ranked fighter in the world going into the Moreno fight.
Yeah.
He lost decisively to Moreno. I think he underestimated. And Smolka has a very good ground game. His exceptional wrestling. So I have no idea what is going wrong with Smolka at this point. But even as you said, Borg controlled the fight, because for about at least 70% of the time he was on top, or 80% of the time he was on top. So that extra weight, that makes a lot of difference. That makes a lot of difference, because ideally, you are fighting at 135, 140 immediately after weighing in. And when you're at 130, you have a distinct weight advantage. And these are smaller fighters. Yeah. These are not your exceptional heavyweights where you can say, okay, a 5-pound difference or 10-pound difference doesn't make that much of a difference. In flyweight, it makes a lot of difference. Saying that, Borg controlled the majority of the fight. He, as you said, had good ground control. Immediately took Smolka down in the first round, tried to throw some submissions in. Smolka, he managed to hang on for what it's worth. Third round was when Smolka kind of gave some offense, because he knew that he was losing on the scorecards, so he had to do something in the third round. But again, Borg controlled him, used his weight to his advantage, put extra pressure on Smolka, just grinded him on the ground. So it was a good game plan on Borg's part, but you have to think that the 3.5 pounds that Borg walked in with the advantage might have made a difference.
Factor, yeah, they definitely do. Then it becomes difficult, once a fighter comes in. Of course, it's up to the other fighter to accept the fight or not, but he's not going to say no. And we've discussed this before.
Yes,
it's very hard for them to say no, and the other fighter comes in with the advantage then.
Yes, so the last time what happened with Cole Miller, for example, was because the event got cancelled. He got 1/3 of the show was because the event itself was cancelled. Yeah. But when you go into the fight week and you weigh and you get the show money, nonetheless, no matter what happens, you get the show money.
Yeah.
For Smolka, so it was a risky move saying yes. Although the added advantage for Smolka was, if he had won, he not only would he get the win bonus, he would also have gotten 30% of Borg's fight purse. Yeah. So that was the added advantage, but it was, again, he was at a considerable disadvantage going into the fight.
Yeah.
So as a fighter, someone who's coming off a loss, you would want to prove yourself, because he was, as I said, the last time around, he was just 2 fights away from getting a title shot, throwing himself into contention. So if you're a fighter who's facing someone who's in the top 15, ideally you would want to take the fight, you'd want to prove yourself and get back into title contention. So I think that was what Smolka would have wanted to do.
Yeah.
But things didn't turn out the way he would have wanted.
Yeah. Now coming to Tariq Saffiedine and Kim. Kim, of course, was the aggressor. Kept getting hit while moving ahead. He showed some good judo moves as well. He's known as a judoka. But there weren't any highlights in the fight as such, and I think I do remember hearing some boos. Because he just kept moving forward, and there were some exchanges. Tariq Saffiedine tried to take advantage of that. It did go to the ground now and then, but by and large, an uneventful fight.
Yes, so the main advantage that Dong Yoon Kim has when he's striking is he manages to find the defensive loopholes in his opponent's guard, and then he gets into the boxing range and then just outstrikes his opponent. That's how he always has been. But Tariq Saffiedine, and people have already forgotten that he was the last Strikeforce welterweight champion. Is someone that is an exceptional fighter himself, and is very well rounded, as we discussed during the preview. The other factor was, Saffiedine is now training out of TriStar, which itself has an exceptional, set of coaches. Like, for example, you have Frab. What he does is he makes sure that he kind of covers up or puts plaster on your defensive holes. And that's what we saw with Tariq Saffiedine. Dong Yoon Kim tried to push the pace, tried to find the openings in his guard, but he could not do that. And that is trademark TriStar. They're very good when it comes down to covering the fighters' disadvantages. Saying that, as you said, it wasn't a dominant fight. It wasn't a fight where both of them were throwing down in the first or second round, and that's why you heard a lot of boos. And I also said, what, they're trying to see where the openings are. That's ideally what you do as a fighter. If you go in, if you try to just bulldoze your way through someone else, you get caught on the counter. That is very irresponsible. So as a fighter, what would you do? You size each other up. You make sure, and this is where you have very scientific guys like Dominic Cruz who try to find the opponent's holes in the first or second round and then exploit them in the third, fourth, and fifth. So I thought Kim tried doing that, but he couldn't find those openings that he would have wanted. So ideally, in the third round, it was for 20 or 30 seconds, you had both the fighters just throwing down and then going back to the original game plan of trying to size each other up, trying to find the defensive holes so that they could just, get in with the combinations, probably try to finish the opponent. But that didn't happen.
Yeah. Shall we move on and get to the three exciting fights? Let's move on to the three exciting fights. Of course, Kim did win that fight, I think mainly on the shoulders of his moving forward most of the time. Now getting to the top three fights, TJ Dillashaw, ex-champ, bantamweight champ versus John Hands of Stone Lineker. Of course, John Lineker won that fight over John Dodson some time back, which was kind of disputed because it wasn't really a dominant victory, and we did analyze that as well. TJ Dillashaw, of course, coming off, I think his last win was Ralph Asanko, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of confidence, and one could see that as well. His movement was great. Lineker was able to reach him only very few times. He was able to sidestep most of the time, and even on the ground, I think there was just one time where he had TJ Dillashaw in a little bit of difficulty. Otherwise, TJ Dillashaw more or less controlled the flow of this whole fight in all three rounds.
Yeah, and we discussed that this was going to happen. You have TJ, who's just so evolving. I was very impressed in how he has come along. He has a background in NCAA Division I wrestling. He has the Bang Muay Thai, Then he's improved tremendously under Duan Ludwig in his striking department.
Yeah.
So we've already covered all of that, and we said unless Lineker manages to catch Dillashaw with his heavy hands, heavy overhand right that he uses as his weapon, TJ is gonna walk through Lineker, and that's exactly what happened. To give Lineker credit, there was that instance in second round when Dillashaw was just raining with those punches, those flurry of elbows, those nasty elbows when he had Lineker down and he was on the mount. So he almost finished Lineker, but Lineker managed to hang on because his head is made out of concrete. He's similar to what Nate Diaz is,
Yeah.
which is he has very good chin, absorbs so much punishment, and still comes back.
Yeah.
But as you said, Dillashaw was just all over Lineker. He showed his superiority. As we said, he used his wrestling, he used his striking to set up the takedowns. Then once he took Lineker down, he just wouldn't give up. He managed to find those transitions where he either got Lineker's back or then transitioned to the mount, where he tried to finish him, and then he tried to throw in a couple of submissions. You had Dillashaw trying to go for the heel hooks, trying to various submission attempts. That was an all-round phenomenal performance by TJ. As a guy who just lost his title at the early, beginning of 2016.
Yeah.
He has evolved so much even since that fight with Dominic Cruz, and his foot movement has improved tremendously as well. The way in which you saw TJ slouching, changing levels, constantly moving against someone like Lineker, because you cannot stand in front of Lineker and trade. That is not going to work. So he, similar to John Dodson, knew the importance of movement, and TJ is phenomenal when it comes to that. So that all worked in his favor, all round, a very impressive.
Lineker almost came off as one-dimensional in this, in this fight, because he was just looking, for that knockout to engage Dillashaw, and Dillashaw knew exactly what his game plan was going to be and kept slipping in and out. So Lineker coming across as one-dimensional.
Yeah, so as I said, Lineker basically wants to go for that overhand right and finish fights. He's primarily a brawler, although he's very good all round as well. And TJ made Lineker look amateurish on the ground, but Lineker also has very good ground game. So that was a very impressive showing. And Lineker, as you said, wanted to just finish the fight with that one big overhand right, bring Dillashaw down and finish him, but that didn't happen because Dillashaw was moving so well. You cannot stand in range and trade with someone like Lineker. That's a very bad idea, and Dillashaw did not do that. And the manner in which he used his Muay Thai as well, Bang Muay Thai, and his striking that has improved so much in the past 1 year, and he used those effectively to set up those takedowns. And once he took Lineker to the ground, Lineker almost looked out of depth.
Yeah.
He did not know what to do. He barely managed to hang on in the second round. And once it came down to the third round, Dillashaw once again showed his exemplary striking, exemplary ground game, took Lineker down, set those takedowns very well, and then managed to get the decision victory.
Yeah. Well, with a very deserved decision victory. Now, coming to the next, and what a lot of people, including me, would say was the most exciting fight of the day, and maybe one of the fights of the year as well. Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz. Now of course, a lot of people thought Dominic Cruz is going to be unhandleable with his movement, with his ins and outs. He's going to slip out. But Cody Garbrandt seemed very, very ready for this Dominic Cruz. His team, Alpha Males, seemed to have come up finally with a plan to counter Dominic's movements, where they weren't reaching out for him all the time. Of course, there were a lot of times that he hit and missed, but he never lost his composure. Previously, we've seen Dillashaw and Faber also, when almost seem depressed when they swing and miss, or they kick and miss, and it's almost like they feel a little stupid, and that starts playing on their game. Whereas Garbrandt seemed composed all the time. Even if he missed, it didn't seem to bother him. He knew it would be part of, the game and the fight today, but he always maintained his composure. He knew what Dominic Cruz was going to do. His ground game was great as well today. His reflexes were amazing. His stand-up game was outstanding, and he just kept pointing to the center of the octagon, kept taking it to the center, almost like I thought Dominic Cruz was going to show him the finger, because he kept pointing to it and ordering him almost back to the center of the octagon. And I thought, Dominic Cruz is just like, he's like ordering, he's controlling the fight. Like, come back here, come back here. Idhar aa, idhar aa. So that's what I found really entertaining. And of course, Cody Garbrandt's dance moves and doing push-ups in between and talking to him. He was entertaining and talented. And, of course, we've known a new star has been on the horizon for a long time. But tonight, a star was launched, and it's, especially, I think that was the third round, or was it the fourth, where he where Dominic Cruz went down like 3 times?
That was, I think the fourth round.
Third or fourth round, the fourth. So, he had some really dominating rounds, and he just seemed in no trouble at all. I think it was the first or second round where he did get cut above the eye.
The first, yes.
Yeah, a little, but that didn't seem to bother him much. And like we said, he seemed so in control, because before the fight, you thought you might have a raging bull on your hands. Some people called him rabid, and he was angry all the time, but he was so composed. And I think that was the difference between him winning and losing tonight, because he was so confident. Like we said, he almost in some rounds toyed and played with Cruz, with his dance moves and his break dance and his push-ups, and amazing, very entertaining to watch, I would say.
Yeah. So when you have someone like Dominic Cruz, who's very scientific, unlocking the mystery of Dominic Cruz itself is one of the most scientific breakdowns that you could see in MMA. And Team Alpha Male has tried doing that before with Uriah Faber, with TJ Dillashaw, although TJ Dillashaw at that point switched camps. But it's the way in which there are a couple of things that Team Alpha Male and Cody in particular got right. Yeah. One, the mind game. Going into the fight, everyone thought Cody would be the one that would be flustered, that would, once you get inside the cage, would be the aggressor, would make mistakes. What Cody did eventually was, when you saw Dominic Cruz coming out, he was very angry. Yeah. We have never seen a Dominic Cruz.
So in fact, it almost didn't. I was going to write this. It didn't behoove him. That look, that that look doesn't behoove Dominic Cruz.
Yes, and once they both got inside the cage, so what Dominic Cruz does is very, very scientific. What he does is, you have something called bait and switch. Yeah. So what he does is, the first round, he never goes on the offensive. He always tries to see what the opponents do when it goes. So he feints a lot. For example, if he tries moving in, he stops. He sees what the opponent's reaction is. And then on studying it a couple of times, that's when he baits the opponent in, switches, and then, tags them with a counter. So it's very scientific. The movement, that is why Dominic Cruz's movement is so scientific. That is because not only is he, using feints a lot to bait his opponents in, but he uses those angles accurately to get out of that predicament, and then use combinations or counters to tag his opponent. So that is very, very, very scientific. I thought Dominic was trying to do that, but the interesting thing is, Cody did not take the bait. So if you see the fight once again, because that's what I was concentrating on, I was watching what Cody would do. You see Dominic Cruz coming into the range, he feints moving in, he stops, he sees what Cody is trying to do. He's not doing anything, he's just standing there. So that I think played with Dominic's set, because he has never faced an opponent who did not react the way he would have wanted.
Who didn't take the bait. They've all taken the bait.
Yes, and Cody, showed excellent movement. You could see Cody almost toying with Dominic with the combinations. Dominic is known for his head movement, just to avoid the combinations. He was one of the most elusive fighters in UFC history, the most elusive in bantamweight.
But
And
Cody's
Cody
hand
out,
speed seemed to be faster than that elusiveness.
yeah, and Cody was being more elusive than Dominic is.
Yeah, he was being more elusive. He
Yeah, and
actually had his, slide outs and everything,
so
on the mark rather than Dominic.
yeah, so that is what I thought. Cody, that is where I thought Cody got the upper hand. He got into Dominic's head. So he did that within the first 2 rounds. So once Dominic saw that he could not fluster Cody, he could not bait him, he could not get him into the predicaments that he wanted. He was not able to read Cody.
Yeah.
That is the main
And
difference.
he was the one who was having to go after Cody then.
Yeah, so Cody, what he successfully did was in the first 3 or 4 rounds, he managed to, he made sure that he was, leading on the scorecards.
Yeah.
He made sure that he had won at least 3 of the first 4 rounds. So when it came down to the final round, you see Dominic Cruz chasing his opponent. That has never happened.
Yeah, because Dominic knew he had to get those rounds or knock him out to get the win then.
Right. So I thought this was very, very cerebral on Cody's part, very cerebral on Team Alpha Male's part.
Good,
so
yeah.
What worked for Cody Garbrandt and what did not work for Uriah Faber was the youth, the agility of youth, the manner in which Cody's reflexes were better than Dominic Cruz's. And when we talked to Uriah Faber, he pointed out one thing. He said, "Look, I think this is Cody's time because it's a natural, way of evolution.
Yeah.
I gave way to Dominic Cruz when I was 35. He was 31. Now he's about 35, and Cody's 25. So it's a way of evolution. Cody.
No, Dominic is 30.
Sorry?
Dominic Cruz is 30.
Sorry, yeah, Dominic Cruz is 31.
Yeah.
So what Uriah Faber told us was, when Uriah Faber was 35, Dominic was about 29, 30 earlier this year. So when when he had to pass the torch, now it's Dominic's time to pass on the torch to Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah.
So I thought, that is where Cody was much, much better. He was faster. It looked like Cruz's age caught up with him. He was slower. His reflexes were not as good as they used to be.
I wouldn't agree with you. I would say Cody made him look like that. I think because Cody was faster than his previous opponents like a Faber or a Dillashaw, that's why Dominic Cruz looked slower rather than him actually being slower than just the beginning of this year. The beginning of this year wasn't that far away. He fought Dillashaw and Faber both in this year. So I don't think he remarkably aged or his reflexes went slower during this time.
During his fight with Dillashaw, I did not think Cruz had the movement advantage. Obviously, he still has very good reflexes, very good movement, but during his fight with Dillashaw, it wasn't, and that was why many people even thought Dillashaw had won the fight. It was very, very close. That's why Dillashaw was even disappointed on losing the title. So I don't think the movement was that big of a difference during their fight. But when he fought Uriah Faber, Faber, twilight of his career, very slower than what he used to be at least. So that was where Dominic looked, untouchable, looked very elusive, was much better in the way he moved, creating those angles, baiting Faber in and then connecting with the counters. But that did not work with Cody Garbrandt because Cody made Cruz look amateurish. By the 4th and 5th round, Cruz was just swinging and he was missing and he was sloppy and he was awkward. So, it was a fantastic display of just out cruising Cruz, I would say, because he did not take the bait of Cruz.
Yeah.
Instead, he made Cruz take the bait. So that was the key difference.
I think it was a very effective game plan by Team Alpha Male because they've obviously fought him so many times, been on the losing side, and finally, come up with an effective plan because they've now known all the traps that they've fallen into. Over these years, and they knew which traps not to fall into this time.
Right. So as I said, Cruz's movement, it's very elusive. It cannot be exactly imitated, but just by studying Cruz's game plan, it's kind of okay. I think it's not easy, but it's not impossible to emulate what Cruz does. What Cruz does, as I said, is bait and switch. That's what he primarily does in the first, second rounds. Create those angles and then, tag with the counters and combinations. Then set up his takedowns, then work his opponent on the ground. or he has never finished. At least he hasn't finished in the past few years. He hasn't finished his opponents, maybe just once or twice in his entire career. So I thought, Team Alpha Male finally got it right. They could not do it with Uriah Faber, obviously because of the age factor. Because Dominic Cruz is much faster than Faber. But with Cody Garbrandt, Cody has the power advantage. Arguably the hardest hitter in the 135-pound division. Then, as we even talked about, his wrestling has exemplary wrestling background. So he had all of those going for him, but the manner in which he was able to make Cruz take the bait instead of falling for Cruz's traps, that was phenomenal. That is where I thought the entire fight was decided.
Yeah. Well, I hate to say this, but I picked the right guy, Cody Garbrandt, for once. I got lucky, but like I said, I had a feeling that those power shots were going to count. Now, moving on to the main event, of course, the fight, even though, I knew this was the exciting one, Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt was going to be the exciting one. But of course, the main event, Amanda Nunes versus Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey making a comeback after more than a year of being out under the radar. No MMA media, not even leading up to this. Of course, she was on the Embedded series, but that's not really an interview. The one did see and hear a lot of her, coming up to this fight. She seemed confident. She seemed like the old Ronda, though it would have been very hard to get that out of your head. The way she had lost to Holly Holm, making a comeback. And of course, a lot of the UFC ads and media being centered around Ronda's comeback. But Amanda seemed very comfortable with this all, partly because she admitted of her own admiration for Ronda and what all Ronda has done for women's UFC, and not just women's UFC, but the UFC and mixed martial arts in general. She is big star, of course, still of the UFC, and MMA needs such huge stars. She's done a lot for the sport. Amanda admired and admitted to looking up to her, and and knowing that this fight and a possible win over Ronda would really secure her place as the champ and a certain legacy for her as well. The fight, of course, I don't want to use the word uneventful, but uneventful because Ronda wasn't able to do much. It's like Amanda knew exactly what she was going to do. She just needed to find Ronda's chin. And the first time she found it, you could see Ronda's face changing again. Ronda really doesn't like to be hit much, and not many people have hit her like that except Holly Holmes. But Amanda was like laser precision, finding that chin time and time again, and just no respite. I think Ronda tried to close the distance on one or two occasions, tried to grab that arm. Amanda knew what was coming, just got out of it, and the referee just had to stop it. How many more times was she going to be able to take it on the chin? Because she wasn't, at that point of time, it was very clear that the referee had to step in. Ronda wasn't able to defend herself. She was only going to take more damage. So I would say it was a very correct time, because he did give Ronda some time to fight back. Because I think that is, there is a magic time of when to stop a fight, of you have given the other fighter just, because we have seen a lot of situations where people have taken damage but come back, but today it was very clear that there was at that point going to be no coming back for Ronda. So I would say it was stopped at the right time. Amanda, and still the champ. I wonder what is next for Ronda. We could possibly hear a retirement call, because I don't see her going down and fighting other people and making her way back, because now, after she got immediately after her comeback a chance at the title, I would say Valentina Shevchenko versus Juliana Pena, the winner of that should be the next one in line. And then you have some other people, and of course, there's a new division coming up. I don't know. Do you think Ronda might move up to that division also? You never know. So but a heck of a fight, a heck of a fighter, Ronda Rousey, who is now we are very unsure of what she's has ahead for her now. Could be movies.
Yeah. So going into the fight, much like Dominic Cruz and Cody Garbrandt, the deep end versus the power punch. This came down to two things: Ronda's ability to take the strikes of Amanda Nunes, and Amanda Nunes' ability to not gas out in the second, third, and maybe in the championship rounds.
Yeah.
But you know what? I kind of, and this is what I said. Even when we talked about Nunes and Ronda, I said, after what happened at UFC 193, I do not know if Ronda can make a comeback.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ronda can again be that Ronda Rousey that dominated the division for years. And I have to point. Many people have said it before. I've said it before, but the blame has to be given to her coach Edmund and his gym Glendale, because they have done. They've taken two people that were virtually at the very top. Ronda Rousey and then Travis Brown,
yeah.
and Edmund single-handedly ruined
low battery.
Yeah.
So the game plan just didn't make any sense. I mean, what was she thinking? When you're going up against someone like Amanda Nunes, who is going to be offensive, who is going to be the aggressor, who is going to push the pace, who is going to come right out of the blocks with those power combinations, because Amanda Nunes has always been known to be the aggressor in the first round and just kind of slow down in the second and third. And you always know that she has some really, really heavy hands. Once she connects with those combinations, you're in deep trouble. Ronda did not learn a lesson from Holly Holm, her fight with Holly Holm, because what did she do with Holly, who is primarily one of the elite strikers in the world?
Yeah.
She stood up and she wanted to trade, which makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Just because she she knocked out someone like Betch Correa, who is nowhere striker as Holly Holm or Amanda Nunes,
or even in terms of reach, build. Very
even if. Because even in a fight with Betch Correa, for example, Ronda got tagged. You could see her face turning red, but Betch hits nowhere as hard as someone like Holly Holm or Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of people said Edmund has to take the majority of the blame, because you need to devise a game plan that would work for Ronda Rousey, and instead Ronda just kept going into those pockets, kept standing in the range, trying to trade with.
It was almost like she was standing there to be a punching bag, unfortunately.
Yeah, and once she got lit up, she tried to go for her judo throw.
Oh, yeah.
But Amanda, again, she's strong.
Yeah.
I have no idea what Edmund even devises a game plan for Ronda Rousey, because she tried to go for a judo throw, but obviously Amanda blocked it. Pushed Ronda against the fence, just lit her up. So it doesn't make any sense. Many people have said Ronda needs to leave Edmund's camp, and I've been saying that for at least the past year. Even before a fight with Holly Holm, because even if you see what Edmund was saying during the Holly Holm fight, where he was delusional, he was telling Ronda that she was catching her, she was doing good, she was getting Holly Holm into trouble. At the end of the day, you have to look at yourself. You have to take the blame, but at the same time, you have to blame someone like Edmund, who has ruined Ronda Rousey's career the past two fights, and even Travis Brown. Look at where Brown is.
Yeah.
Look at his previous fight with Verdum. Makes zero sense. I don't know what Edmund is devising as a game plan for these people, but it's obviously not good. It's obviously not working. And these people are delusional enough. Ronda Rousey and Travis Brown have always supported Edmund, have always backed him up, have always backed the Glendale camp, which is as long as you do that, as long as you live in a delusional world where you think what you do is correct, although a lot of people say, and even you deep inside know that what you're doing is not correct, and you're still not trying solving those issues, you're not correcting those mistakes, you're not going to go anywhere. Now, as you said, where does this leave Ronda Rousey? I'm pretty sure she's not going to go up to 145. That is out of the question for Ronda Rousey. If she does, what is her reasoning? Because there is only one more logical fight that makes sense for Ronda Rousey at this point, and that is a rematch with Holly Holm. What UFC wanted to do was, they thought Ronda would come back, would bulldoze away through Amanda Nunes, capture the 135-pound belt, where Holly Holm will be the 145-pound champion. Then you have that super fight, the rematch that the world wants to see, where Ronda Rousey goes up against her biggest test to date. But that has fell flat on its face. So what's next? And Ronda is always going to be a big star. She's always going to be a big draw. She's always going to do numbers. She's always going to drag people's eyeballs. But where is Ronda going to go next? After losing two back-to-back fights, would it make sense for UFC to give Ronda her rematch with Holly Holm? Or would UFC say, you know what, maybe you need to, because Ronda doesn't need to fight, those big championship fights to stay relevant. She's still Ronda Rousey. She still has a name. But, you have Holly Holm, Chris Cyborg. Maybe that's never going to happen, but that's a fight that everyone wants to see.
Yeah. I don't see it happening now because she's obviously, against somebody who has better reach and height advantage over her. Ronda, I don't see her, setting herself up against a striker now.
Cyborg would destroy her.
Yeah.
Cyborg, and this is something that everyone was saying even before the Holly Holm fight. The reason why Ronda was ducking, and previously 3 years ago, Ronda Rousey was the first person who said, I want a 140-pound catchweight fight because that would, lay a gap or lay a bridge for the 145-pound division.
Yeah.
I want to go to 140, I want to fight and make sure there's a 145-pound division as well. So she said that. But when Chris Cyborg came in, Ronda said, why do I have to go down to 140? She has to come down to 135 because I'm the champion.
Yeah.
So Ronda obviously knew all that time that if she went up against someone like Cyborg, who's an elite striker, she's just going to get bulldozed. What Cyborg did with Gina Carano, for example. Gina was, again, Ronda Rousey. She wasn't that great, I think. She had a lot of holes. But she was the Ronda Rousey of the 2000 to 2010 because she was the one who was pioneering the women's MMA, was the marketable face of the promotion. Cyborg destroyed her. Yeah. She destroyed Gina Carano and retired her from the sport. So I think there has always been that small part of Ronda Rousey that said, if I go up against Chris Cyborg, I would be humiliated. But can it be even more humiliating than being finished in 48 seconds?
Yeah.
The supposedly pound for pound the best fight on the planet, someone who would destroy Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match. That was all Ronda Rousey. Dana White started saying Ronda would beat Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
They created an aura around Ronda Rousey where she was invincible. No one could ever beat Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
Now, and I blame it on Glendale. I blame it on Edmund. They're obviously not doing it right. But you have the likes of Travis Brown and Ronda Rousey who live in their own world where they say, no, what we're doing is correct. We'd rather do this our way. Well, that's what you get if you're not listening to people, and if you still live in your own delusional world and say what we do is right. This is what happens in the end.
Well, we are just going to join you back in 1 second for a roundup of UFC 207. Hold on. Thank you. And the MMA India Show is back. Like we were saying, a large part of the blame falls on her coach Edwin and the Glendale club. Do you think she would now leave? I mean, nobody can, of course, know what's going on inside her head. We cannot, we can only guess and conjecture. And remains to be seen. None of us can really say, whether, what she's going to do now and whether this will knock some sense into her, because of course it's been very clear that coming into this fight as well, like you pointed out, there was no clear game plan, or at least no clear the game plan wasn't right, even if there was one. To stand in front of Amanda like that was foolhardy, and she paid the price for it.
Right.
So let's see. Nevertheless, a great fighter. She's done a lot for MMA, for the UFC. She has, of course, gotten a lot of support from the UFC and from Dana White. But I'll tell you what, I really respect the UFC and these fight promotions, because no matter how much they build a fighter up, they'll build a fighter up, they'll say this about him, they'll do that. It's all for the business. But inside the ring, everything is fair.
Yeah, I mean,
there's nothing which is scripted. There's nothing which you can point a finger at in terms of, you feel the promotion or the UFC or somebody's playing hokey pokey. They have built people up and they have come crumbling down. Whether it's a Van Page in her last fight against Michelle Waterson, or a Ronda Rousey, who's been a great champion, but has been found out against certain kinds of fighters who she didn't face before. So
right. Yeah. So in the end, you're a fight promotion. There is only the certain degree to which you can protect your fighters.
Yeah.
Although I do not say UFC has always protected Ronda Rousey. They threw her against someone like Sarah McMahon, who is an Olympic level wrestler who has very good wrestling. But again, she has never faced the biggest problem, which is the striking department.
Yeah. And the first time she really faced it of an elite level was Holly Holmes.
Yes, and we all know what happened then, and the same thing happened with Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
So, see, I personally think there are only two options for Ronda Rousey at this point. One, retire, and I realistically think she's going to retire. Or I realistically look at her taking one more year off, coming back by the end of 2017 or 2018. And I see if UFC wants to set something up, a swan song of Ronda Rousey per se, I see them either matching her up with someone like Holly Holm. Say that's the rematch of the century.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be much of a rematch or a swan song for her. That might end badly again.
It doesn't really matter at this point because, okay, so going into this fight, what Nevada State Athletic Commission said was Ronda received a disclosed payment of $3 million for showing up. Win bonus, nothing.
Wow.
$3 million. And imagine what the champion Amanda Nunes got.
Yeah.
She got 100,000 for showing up and 100,000 for winning. So that's 200,000 for.
But the champ also gets a portion of the pay-per-view.
Everybody does, not just the champion. You have pay-per-view points which are allocated to the biggest draws. For example, you have Dominic Cruz, you have the main and co-main, and they receive a large chunk of.
But as far as I remember, it's the champions who get the larger share of it, and not just the bigger names, of course.
It's the bigger names. Champions ideally because they are the
bigger names we're talking about, like a Conor McGregor and a Ronda Rousey. But otherwise, I think the champ, if you're a champ, you have to get a certain percentage of the pay-per-view. I think there is something like that.
No, there is. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's not properly diversified. Yeah. So the bigger name, for example, who brings in the big more eyeballs, receives a larger chunk of the pay-per-view money, the revenue gate, the attendance, whatever it is. So ideally, just because the bigger guys are the champions at that point, so you ideally go with the champions receiving the larger pay-per-view points. But it's usually the bigger names that get a big chunk of what the revenues are, UFC generates. So the whole discussion is Ronda Rousey at this point, who did not do any media, who from 2015 to 2016 did not appear in front of MMA media or any mainstream media, got $3 million disclosed payout, while Amanda Nunes, who has done all of that, who was not even featured heavily in UFC's promotion, received $200,000 for winning.
Yeah, so that is life? That's the fight game. The Ronda is the one people wanted to come and see, and no disrespect to Amanda, she will build up to that. You know what I mean?
So that's what I'm saying. So even if UFC goes with Ronda and Holly Holm, doesn't matter if Holly Holm destroys Ronda in 10 seconds. The whole point is people will still watch Ronda Rousey. People will still watch Ronda versus Holly Holm.
Exactly, they will. Nobody's saying they won't. But is it the right fight for her? That's a different matter. But people will watch it. So when she needs another $3 million, then she will accept that fight.
Yeah. Otherwise, who is gonna UFC pair her up with? She's not gonna fight Cyborg. Let's be realistic. She's not gonna fight Cyborg. Period. that's a fight that she will never accept.
Yeah.
So if Ronda says, fine, in 2018, I want to come and fight my last fight ever, who is she going to fight? It's either going to be Amanda Nunes or it's either going to be Holly Holm. She's not going to fight Amanda Nunes. She's going to fight the one person that brought her downfall, and that is Holly Holm. And you have a story behind it as well.
Yeah.
So if I was UFC and if I was realistically looking at one final fight for Ronda Rousey at this point, I would say Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey, maybe at the end of 2017 or the beginning of 2018. But there is also the possibility of Ronda Rousey now coming out and saying, "Look, this is it. This is it. I've retired. This was my final fight." Much like what Miesha Tate did. Miesha, being the competitive, fighter she is, said, "Look, I know for a fact that my game is going down, and I do not want to end up in a position where I lose a string of fights and then announce my retirement." She lost 2 fights and then she said, "You know what? This is done. I'm done fighting." So I see Ronda probably taking the same call.
Well, either ways, we wish her all the best. And that was the wrap up on all the fights. Now, for the people who entered the contest, the results, if you voted for Hendricks, Borg, Kim, Dillashaw, Garbrandt, and Amanda Nunes, then you will get your hands on a pair of USI Universal gloves delivered to your doorstep. And if not, better luck next time. UFC 208.
Lost,
Sorry?
Hendricks lost. You said Hendricks.
Sorry. I said Hendricks. Yeah, I meant Magny. Now, let me repeat that. Magny, it's probably because I, in my head, thought Hendricks deserved to win. Let me repeat that. It was Magny, Borg, Kim, Dillashaw, Garbrandt, and Amanda Nunes. If you got these 6 names right, you will get a pair of USI Universal gloves delivered to your doorstep. If not, UFC 208 is... When is UFC 208?
So before that, you have one in Sioux Falls, I think, on January 14th or 15th. That's the Brian Caraway.
No, but the competitions we're keeping for the main cards. The UFC.
So it's in February.
It's February. Okay. So I guess you guys will maybe have to wait till Feb. If not, we will maybe have a contest for the Valentina and Pena fight. You never know. So
Yes.
we'll come back with some more contests and prizes. We'll keep making them bigger and better for you guys in the coming year. And before we wrap up, we would like to wish everyone out there a very, very happy New Year 2017. May it be big and bigger for all of you and for us as well. May we get bigger fighters out for you out there to see and speak to and chat with. And we have a whole lot of stuff, like we mentioned before. Our site, MMAindia.com, is going to be coming up pretty soon. So, you're gonna have a lot of stuff to read and discuss on that and watch on that site coming up soon. Akhilesh, anything you want to say before, for the year ending, the year coming up, before we wrap up?
Just that it's been a phenomenal year for MMA, UFC, MMA in particular.
Yeah.
You have promotions that have cropped up this year that have given Indian fighters the opportunity to fight on their platform. You even had one Indian fighter representing the country on Invicta, one of the biggest promotions in the world.
Manjeet Kolikar, which was a very proud moment, and we will hopefully see her fight there again soon. Brave has some very good Indian fighters like an Abdul Munir, a Mohammad Farad, the Sunny Khatri, a Gurdarshan Mangat, even though he's based out of Vancouver, but nevertheless Indian. And some really other exciting fighters. We've had a Jeet Toshi fight in a one championship. Rajendra Singh Meena as well in a one championship. Anybody else I'm missing out? Of course, there are some other fighters who are fighting in other cards like a Chaitanya Gawali and Anil Mehta in cards in Borneo and Malaysia. We are starting to move out there, and I think with this year, some more experience, Indian MMA fighters and Indian MMA will keep getting bigger and stronger.
Yeah, so as you also said, 2017 is probably going to be the most influential year for Indian MMA. I personally think 2017 is going to be the turning point for the sport in the country, because not only do you have a lot of people that are willing to come to India, I know for a fact that someone is willing to come to India in April.
Yeah.
That probably will change the entire landscape. So there are things that are happening in 2017, things that you wouldn't have imagined in 2015 or 2014.
Yeah.
So, 2017 is going to be a big, big year. And also, as you said, the first week of 2017 probably will be huge when it comes to us even. I told you not to announce the name, so we'll just keep that
Yeah,
as a
we will.
suspense.
We'll keep it a secret. Yes.
Yeah,
We'll
so we are
announce it
working
soon.
on getting one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, MMA star in the world today.
Yeah.
Let's hope that happens. But as I said, 2017 is going to be much bigger and better.
Yeah. Well, so touch wood to that. And having said that, me, Akhilesh, and everybody else from the MMA India team wish you a very happy new year. Akhilesh, wish you a very happy new year. I know I have plans to party tonight. I don't know about you.
Same.
Okay, great. So I think we've done enough work for the last day of the year today. It's time to go out and enjoy the rest of the day and the night. And we will bring this episode to you. Of course, when you see it, it will be out. So I don't need to say it'll be coming out very soon. So hope you enjoy this and a lot more episodes and a lot more UFC and MMA stars coming your way. Thank you for joining us in 2016. 2017 will be bigger and better. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy New Year, everyone. Bye from the MMA India team.